We've got some Chapo coming at you. We are back from our sojourn in Chicago. I want to thank everyone who came out and saw us at the Park West Theater. It was a great time. Cheers to all of you who enjoyed that or listened to it and got to experience with me the lovely surprise appearance from one Matt Christman via video. But that was, I would just like to say, a very special moment for me, and I hope for you in the audience as well. That was a very, very fun and heartwarming moment for me. But it's Monday now, back in New York, nose to the grindstone. Let's pick up where we left off on the DNC and this upcoming presidential election. Today, Felix and I are joined by our political reporting and political analysis brain trust. We've got Dave Weigel of Semaphore and Josh Ettingermentum back once again to help break down where the election stands in all of its constituent parts. Josh, I'll begin with you. Now that we've had a chance to take in the full scope of the DNC, you put it in a certain way that I appreciated. That basically it was a successful but concerning convention, in so much as they seemed to do the things they needed to do from a sort of convention standpoint. But you say, like, you're more optimistic about Kamala taking power, but more pessimistic about what she may do with it than ever before. So, Josh, beginning with you, like, what did you think that, like, what do the Democrats have to do at this convention? Did they do it, and what was lacking in your from your perspective?
Yeah, it was a pretty basic task for this. I think Kamala's like task in this election is very, very simple. Democrats generally, like, just speaking very, very broadly, like, this is my thesis about like politics since like January 6th and Dobbs. Democrats, like the average Democrat, wins in the states you need to win against the Trump aligned Republicans or Trump himself. Like, they've done that consistently. Joe Biden was uniquely bad because he was a billion years old and dying, and Kamala was hurt by that association. So the presidential race was sort of in a different universe compared to like the Senate races and special elections and like primary elections, like the stuff voters were actually voted in, like the Washington primary, which I hope to get to in a bit because that's a pretty like important overlooked sign. People were just very concerned about this White House for reasons that, like, it's kind of hard to blame them for. They just generally did not consider it competent across the board. And that was Kamala's problem, and along with Biden's problem. But the difference and the reason, what I said in my article, like back in March when I said I thought she'd be a better shot, Biden's problem was that he was too old, and you can't fix old. You only get older. Kamala's problem is that she was seen as kind of unserious and like stupid, basically. And you can fix that perception. And that's largely what she's done in the past months since she's become the candidate. How much of that is due to her actually like presenting a new face that people are looking at, or how much of it is people just seeing what they want to see in her? Like, I can't really say for sure. But the convention, like the superficial kind of like aesthetic task of it, was to make her look like a strong, decisive, relatively independent leader separate from, I don't know if they realized that they needed to be separate from Biden, but that was a thing they should have tried to accomplish. And I think, like, in just terms of like the quality of her speech, the quality of like Walls's speech, the general kind of production value, and just like getting basic points across, I don't think it like failed pretty like significantly in any respects. But like, it could have been a lot better because I don't think that like the people running it, it's the same people, like the chickens are sort of coming home to roost, where she's keeping in the same people from Biden's campaign who have a very curious understanding of political reality, to say the very least.
David, so this was Kamala's coronation. You know, like he's in control of the party now, or at least it appears that way. Are you seeing anything from your reporting or the polls that would suggest that this is a bounce she's going to take into the general election? Or like, it seems like all the momentum is with Kamala now. Did the convention help or hurt that?
Convention probably helped, so we're not going to get polling that captured all the convention until middle of the week. That's usually when you get Quinnipiac and a few other things. I saw the Kennedy dropout, Trump endorsement happen at the same time. I think might affect things. A lot of people laugh at this, but I do think that Harris is going to get dinged a little bit by people coming out back from the RFK coalition. Not many, but that's going to have an impact. But what we were just hearing there about the Democratic enthusiasm, it was surreal at the convention. I mean, there are these bus lines that got delegates back into the convention, which was a mess. The final day, people were showing up with tickets 2 hours for the Harris speech, and they couldn't get in. And I was watching all these Democratic volunteers, DNC volunteers, getting purple pom-poms and going to the buses, kind of cheering people as they got in, and these huge this big mural that was created by Emily's List with Harris on it. And I had the same thought as these people were organizing for Biden 10 minutes ago. And when they were organizing for Biden, you were an ableist if you suggested maybe the 78, no, that's Trump. The 81-year-old president was not the best candidate. Like, they turned immediately. And one thing, I don't think this is even showing up in polls because I don't think people care. Republicans really want people to blame Democrats or get angry that they did this, and no one cares. Everyone is so happy to not have to deal with Biden anymore. I think maybe Harris got the end of her boost on that note that she's not Biden. Maybe that's running out. But yeah, it being like a 12, 13-point boost, I'm kind of not surprised. I think I might have discussed this last episode, but just the normal voter out there was the one who said, how could you do this to us? How can you make us choose these people again? And they're still riding that high.
It's been like a remarkable swing, one of the most insane swings, just as far as like pure numbers at this point in an election that we've seen in like the modern era. How much of that do you attribute just to like the Democratic base's exhaustion with Biden? Because my very non-scientific way of looking at this, engaging the temperature of the Democratic voter, was to go to DJ Academics, and I don't support him in any of his legal struggles that he's currently engaged in, any of his lawsuits. But to go to Academics' page when he posted like a Trump or politics thing, and it seemed like when Biden was the candidate, or even before the election, if he posted a Trump thing, the comments were out of the people that gave a shit to comment about a politics thing on Academics' Instagram page, overwhelmingly in support of Trump. And I didn't get the sense that like he had an especially conservative audience, or that there was this, that like, oh, this is the year that 30% of black voters vote for a Republican, like they've been saying for the last 12 years. It was more a sense, sort of, again, talk about reverse 2016, that there was a social stigma in being like, I am with the shambolic old Woodrow Wilson candidate. Mm-hmm. I am with Biden. It seemed like after he dropped out, the shame went away. Like, people were more okay with being identified as Democrats in public.
Yeah, it totally did. Instantly. I kept thinking of it as if just Democrats had to lie to themselves for 5 years. And even if they voted for Biden, a very popular lie was, oh, well, he said he's only going to seek one term. Because he never actually said that. We went to the edge so you could think it. But if you talk to just normal Democrats for 4 or 5 years, they just, it was like, the kids in It's a Good Life, the Twilight Zone episode, who know that the kid can wish them into the cornfield and turn into a monster. And they're like, no, it's good that you did that. It's really good that you shuffled off stage and went to the wrong door and then to the right door and then back to the wrong door for some reason. It's really good. It's not. We really like that you're doing it. Please keep doing it. They just were lying. And this is the thing. Sometimes you don't pay a penalty for lying. The fact that they were just full of it with themselves. They just are like people who stopped drinking, and they're like, I have clarity now. I like, please don't judge me by the years I spent drinking and falling backwards into wedding cakes. Now I feel great, and I feel honest, and I feel the gospel of Kamala, and they really do. That is the difference. Like this, somebody had a good take about this. I think it was Rick Perlstein who was saying you could just tell when Al Gore wanted to talk about climate, but they made him not talk about that because they thought it polled bad. But you could just tell when this is why Trump gets through everything. Is you can tell when he just is saying something, and everyone on his team said don't say it, but it's honest. They're finally honest, and it's with a candidate who had to flip flop on 20 things or more. But they're finally honest, saying yes, we want her to be president. We feel awesome about female president Kamala Harris. They really do. If you polygraph them now, they're not lying.
It is very interesting that, no one remembers at this point, but Kamala had like a fucking brick of a primary campaign in 2020.
Oh, yeah. Not even that. She had 35% approval like in October last year. She was hated. That was peak Kamala for me, when people just hated her so much for being like kind of weird. That was when it was really fun to root for her. It's not as fun now because people like actually like her. But when when like you search like Democratic presidential candidates and every article was about like Whitmer or Newsom or something, like she had like 34% approval and was like 20% in future primary polls. she hadn't really done anything wrong. It was just so funny to me.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of that was like. I mean, Dave, you mentioned that she's like flip flopped on 20 things.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that was, and this was like a recurring problem we saw with candidates in 2020, was that they would sort of in a panicked rush be like, I like Medicare for all. I like the fucking Green New Deal. I'm abolish ICE. I'm friends with Sean McElwee. They would do all that stuff, and it, except for like, one or maybe two candidates, it rang very hollow. You can't be in politics for your entire adult fucking life and then just suddenly be like, oh, I've actually supported Medicare for all this entire time, but now it's safe to say it.
Like if you read Ari Robinhoff's book, he was the deputy chief of staff. Like they knew that they were going to create a bunch of litmus tests and they were going to trap any candidate who didn't really believe them. And Kamala just went full Wile E. Coyote in favor of all the things that they set up. Not like Bernie sincerely met them. They just realized this would be a way to test if you were full of it, and she was full of it.
But the person who I actually do believe was sincere, the only person besides Bernie, was Beto. Everybody forgets, but Beto voted against the Iron Dome in 2014. He endorsed Uncommitted this year. He was the guy. I'm like, that's just what I believe now. He needed to be elected senator and then elected president, and he'd be like leading by 20 points in the polls right now against like DeSantis.
Beto may have been the only guy who would have gone with my selected policy, the Turkish invasion of Tel Aviv.
Well, Dave, I mean, when I saw you in Chicago, I mean, you alluded to it briefly, but one of the things that was so astonishing to me about this convention and in the like dramatic shift in enthusiasm in the Democratic Party is that you mentioned like not even a month ago, like half of the not normal Democratic voters, but their media partisans were saying that any suggestion that you switch out Biden at the top of this ticket was not just ageist, but also suicidal. And that like it was a fundamental abrogation of democracy. How come none of these people have become never Kamala heads? Where's the party unity my ass contingent now that Biden's been shuffled off this mortal coil, so to speak? And like, it just like,
I mean, that's
how quickly they just, I mean, just insane. Like how quickly, like there were people speaking at the convention who like 2 weeks ago were cutting videos about how we will never stand for anyone other than Joe Biden.
They just swapped out Biden in the Lil Yachty meme. That's all they did. They had the Lil Yachty meme of Biden going out there and swapped in Kamala. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's everyone. I can only compare it to like people after an intervention or after some crisis where they admit, okay, now we all went through it. We're never going to talk about it again. It is weird that no one thinks. Even when I was trying to pull some of them into talking about it, they just don't want to talk about it. Nancy Pelosi was in not hell all week, but Nancy Pelosi kept having to do the same interview again and again about whether Biden and her had a good relationship still, and she was the avatar for all of them, saying, "Why do you care?" I mean, I don't want to be the Dennis Miller of this podcast, just keep thinking cultural references, but it really did remind me of Chris Tucker and Friday, of just like, why are you bringing up old shit? That was a week ago. Yeah. No one wants to hear what happened a week ago. Why are you bringing this up? And they didn't pay a penalty at all. I think there is rumor of polling that says there are some older voters and older white men who used to be for Biden and don't like Harris now. And I believe that might be true on the margins, but no, most of them just they wanted to defend. They got all these goodies from doing this that they didn't expect. I mean, the day of the debate, when I was in Atlanta, I think I talked about this last of my show. Like it was only Republicans who wanted him to stay on the ticket, and I talked to Ipsos, the pollsters at Ipsos, and they had their data that said, "Oh, if the incumbent advantage is so strong that if you have a non-incumbent, they're going to be weaker." And we've run the regression, and it doesn't matter what you do if you have a new candidate who's popular. The incumbency advantage is so huge. And I do think they had data showing this, because data on presidential trends is really bad. There's just not enough of them. But they clung to that data because they wanted to believe there was just some way Biden was going to bounce back. And that they don't have to believe it anymore. They just need Kamala. And even the interviews, which they kind of set up this framework for defending Biden never having to do an interview, is he was not going to do the Super Bowl interview because he's not going to jump to attention to the media. They don't call them fake news, to the media demanding things from him while they cover for Trump, and they just ported that right over to Kamala. It's just, she doesn't need to talk to people. Like, why would she talk to you guys who are doing fact checks that are unfair to us? They were ready to do this campaign. They just 4 years of them feeling bound to the Biden campaign. They detached the stone of failure and attached the stone of triumph, which is in this analogy is much smaller stone.
It is interesting. The sort of Republican response to it, and it's like you almost like can't blame them because it's like imagine that you're going to run against a guy who was opening invisible doors and was like getting on TV and saying insane things. Like you have to write down all the Biden things because there was a new one weekly. I almost forgot what he said. Oh, Earth Mover, thank you for the Great Lakes. That weird shit he said when he saw I don't know, a spirit elf or something, and everyone just ignored it. But yeah, I do feel bad for them, but it's put them in this hilarious position where they're going, they almost sound like Pumas from 2008, where they're like, Joe Biden was the democratically elected president, and you've betrayed the base of the Democratic Party. And it's like, obviously, this flies in the face of like what is now the Republican platform, that he stole the fucking election. Is he the rightful thief of the 2020 election was deposed in an illegal coup?
Okay. Well, this gets to something I want to talk about. Okay, RFK just dropped out. Why don't the Republicans just have a new convention and kick J.D. Vance out and make RFK Jr. the running mate? No, but like, I know that sounds insane, but like seriously, like Josh and David,
they
like,
absolutely want.
Is there any reason people should credit the idea that they might switch out J.D. Vance with RFK Jr.? Because I've seen a lot of people think that's the new hotness. But is there any reason to believe that this is a possibility?
I think you're past the point where it'd be legally possible. Like you get into ballot access deadline issues at this point, but that's like the sole reason.
Well, what if an accident happens to J.D. Vance?
Then they could do it.
They're gonna put polonium in his eyeshadow. That's it's such a weird wish case because it's like, okay, you've got rid of J.D. Vance and you no longer have the off-putting guy that everyone hates. Now you have the off-putting guy that everyone hates who has committed several sexual assaults.
Would they swap him out? I think that they, from talking to the Trump orbit people, the way they see Kennedy, like 2 months ago, they didn't need to do this. They didn't need Kennedy to come over because they thought he was still kind of flypaper for a lot of anti-Biden Democrats. And then because those all went to Harris, then he just was hurting Trump. And they see him as somebody they can slot into. They almost have a parallel universe of not just media, but surrogates. So right now, Democrats have surrogates who can go and hold rallies like Bernie, Warren to a smaller extent, Obama. And what they have are guys who are really good on podcasts. They have Trump who can go on the Nelk Brothers, the Theo Vaughn.
Is cocaine a stronger up?
Yeah. Cocaine
so you're way up with cocaine more than anything else you can think of.
Cocaine will turn you into a damn owl, homie. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You'll be out on your own porch, you know. Yeah. You'll be your own street lamp. You're freaking.
And is that a good feeling? Well,
no,
it's a miserable feeling.
But you do it anyway, just like the guy you're saying with the scotch.
They have JD who can go on the Nelk Brothers. They have Robert F. Kennedy can handle Patrick Bet-David. And they really do see that the swing voter they see is the alienated guy who hates politics and uses the term duopoly like in normal conversation. And they think that voter was on the fence and they've gotten him, and that's worth a couple points. And whatever Democrats say about Kennedy, he's getting those guys. They don't know who Vance added exactly. They'll refer to how Vance helped with conservatives. No, he didn't really. He didn't add anybody to Trump.
Was he supposed to help with white men?
Yeah, like they had a problem with that. No. There wasn't really an ad. Vance they picked because Trump was going to win the election and he could pick anybody. And he picked the guy that Don Jr. liked the most. And Don Jr. also likes RFK Jr. a lot. And this really is a Don Jr. pilled campaign. If the last campaign was Jared Kushner and talking about, when Joe Biden was putting black people in jail, Donald Trump passed the First Step Act. They don't do that anymore. They are all in on Patrick Bet-David mindset on just how can you appeal to people who like who like to win, who like to read books about winning, who like to get microphones and talk to people about winning. They really do think that there are these voters like they had 47%, and then there's a share of voters who love being a winner, talking about like falconing. That's pretty cool. I actually think it is. And you can tell the way they brought in Kennedy, he adds more to the ticket than Vance does. I think if Kennedy had been open to joining the ticket, he was he just kept flaking back and forth. But there was a reason Trump was calling Kennedy right after he got shot and trying to pull him on board. They really did think like this guy is such a good surrogate for us for the voters who will listen to 3-hour podcasts that we need to have him on our team, and now they do.
This is kind of a question for you and Josh. There is a definite departure in tone in this this Trump campaign because the first 2 Trump campaigns, there was almost like a level of embarrassment from the official campaign where it's like, hey, okay, I know this is like a little crazy, but we actually support gay people in so much as like we don't want Al-Qaeda immigrants to kill them, and we're regular. But now, as Dave alluded to, it's a much more bold and Don Jr. based campaign. Do you account this sort of change in posture and content to like a perceived decrease in social stigma in being a Trump supporter?
Yeah, I think I don't want to like it sounds stupid to say, but I like just seeing somebody like Elon like just posting what he posts. It's like this eternal right-wing obsession with culture is the thing that defines everything. It's like the one thing to think about, and one thing I keep on going back to is that one like right-wing writer lady who said like, Christian the religious right has no power in the United States today, and like people brought up the Supreme Court, but it's like they don't like care about that. Their like kind of understanding of what like power is that like it's just like being respected on late night talk shows. They like are terrified of like I think what they perceive to be the flexing of power that liberals did during like the 2020 during the George Floyd protests. They like think that's like the real main vein of how like power is structured in this country because it's something they like really can't get like a grip on. And so they've really spent the past number of years trying to like I think sincerely and putting like seeing this as like a big risk that they have to take and be brave and investing a lot of money into it, creating their own parallel structure that they can imagine they can like have their own version of those NBA commercials where they told people to vote, like how they would have Stacey Abrams on like morning talk shows a lot. They think that's like what they need to do to like succeed. And they think that having successfully created that in a lot of instances, like with Twitter and only using those places, it gives them double confidence. They think, well, we've gotten rid of the most powerful left-wing institution in the media. We have our own alternative, like kind of system here with like cat turd or dog shit or whatever other counts of 10 million followers they have on there. And like they being stuck in that, it becomes an echo chamber where they think that like it's working and they're succeeding. I think that like those posts were like they're complaining about being throttled and how that just can't be right, or like really kind of illustrative here, like where Cat Turd is complaining about how they're like shadow banning him. Like they cannot conceive of not winning here. If they're not doing well, something has to be wrong. And like kind of admitting to the reality would be to conceding to something that's really scary to them. Because if you put all this money into buying Twitter or Truth Social, and it turns out that's not actually how things work, like what's next? What do you do?
Well, I mean, they'd have to face up to the fact that on their most cherished issues, that they have become a moral minority in this country, which is inconceivable to them. Josh, I wanted to give you your flowers, as the kids say, because you know you rated JD Vance as one of the worst vice presidential, like even like before your most recent piece where you said he's the worst VP pick of all time. He was one of among in the lowest tiers of your VP power rankings. And I just got to come back to the donut clip.
The zoo has come to town. Thank you for letting us come in here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay.
Just everything. Yeah, I mean, a lot of glazed here, some sprinkle stuff, some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever makes sense.
The donut clip, which has gotten a lot of burn. And there are like probably 10 things in that video that are just inconceivable. Like saying to like, what donuts do you want? Saying whatever makes sense was like one of the most like Voight-Comp test fails I've ever seen. But just the fact that they didn't send, because like the thing is, this is weird because like Trump is so good at that kind of like, you know, sort of customer
Retail
service
politics.
interaction.
Yeah.
You know,
Where
where he comes in and buys
McDonald's.
sandwiches, he buys everyone pizza or whatever. But like the fact that they didn't scout someone ahead, because like normally you want to talk to the owner of the donut shop who is happy to talk to you and promote their business. The employees don't give a shit. Like when he's just like, "Hi, I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president." And she just goes, "Okay."
No, he's doing he's endorsed sectoral bargaining, so he's like their tribune.
Yeah.
Or the clip where he actually does talk to the business owner when he goes to the deli in Kenosha, and he's like, "Hey, do you have any food that's like really shitty so we could give it to journalists?"
I want to ask that really badly now.
Like, who goes to a fucking restaurant and is like, "What's your shittiest food?" What do you think that really sucks dick?
That's going to be an intrusive thought for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to do that at least once. I want to ask them like what their worst food is.
Like asking a waiter, "Hey, what's bad here? I'd like to have that, please."
Yeah.
Hey, what do you got that could give my wife diarrhea? My battle axe wife, and then just look around waiting for other businessmen to like nod their heads or high five you.
Also, just assuming that like a deli owner in Kenosha, the last Italian in Kenosha, sort of the last Roman encircled by Germanic barbarians in a way. Like assuming that this man who, you know, he probably he's married to Strega Nono, that nice mouse who cooks all the pasta.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming that man is like, "Oh, I want to kill the media too. I hate Caitlin Collins." Like, no, most people aren't thinking about that.
I think the problem with Vance is that he's not naturally like Trump at all. And he's watching a lot of people try to become Trump has been excruciating. And watching him, he not clearly, like he has a very well-examined biography. A lot of people have read his book, and a lot of people went to school with him, and they'll talk to reporters like, "This is not the man I know." Except every time he changed in the direction of becoming more influential, more powerful. That's normal. A lot of people do that and then run for office. But it's when he's never been like this. Like he always in the halls of the Congress, there are Republicans who hate reporters and won't talk to them. Like Mike Lee always fakes a phone call because he hates reporters, and he really does in his bones think they're evil. And Vance did not think that way, but then he'll over, and you always screw up like when you're overcompensating. You're always in the 40-year-old virgin, you know, saying, "Oh, how do boobs feel? Like a bag of sand." That's right, fellas. Am I right? Am I right? You know how we like boobs?
At least Stefanik was like this too. Like she like endorsed the great replacement theory.
She would do this stuff Trump wasn't even asking for, like we're going to expunge his impeachment, and he never even commented on it because he thought that was stupid.
Yeah,
I think Vance has more talent than that in some ways, but he never was a backslapping politician. He was a guy who got into politics through Peter Thiel and through the Founder Network, that's a path. I mean, Blake Masters tried it and failed. He succeeded in it, but he never was the guy who was the best at relating to people in the duck blind. He just wasn't him. Like Don Jr. is actually better than him. So when he tries to be a tough guy, cracking wise to reporters, he's much better when he's just being kind of chill and talking to reporters because he wants to be a chill guy who gets along with people. It's weird seeing him in this position. Like that was the worst example of it though. The donut thing, I thought, everyone jumps on that, but I watched that with my mouth hanging open for 2 minutes. It was bad. You're supposed to have at least one person in there who's happy to meet you.
Yeah, and also when he said, "Looks like the zoo has come to town." No, zoos don't travel.
That's not a thing that happens. Yeah,
the zoo came to town.
Yeah. It's like either your town has a zoo or it doesn't.
Yeah. You know what? I think like the way people try to psychoanalyze him is that he's like overeducated, he's overcompensating, he's like insecure and wants to be seen as like this really intellectual person. I'm just going to take him at his word. That is a thing a fucking hick says. He is a hillbilly. Like you ain't ever been. Like you think the zoo travels? Like, God damn it! I believe you now. You're fucking Cletus.
It is this posture. The posture, like as Dave put it, is so weird. Though, specifically for Vance, because like I was paying attention to his sort of turn in 2021, back when he was on Twitter and saying things where he sounded like Sideshow Bob going "Capital knockers, ma'am," when he's trying to fit in with the construction workers, where he would say things like, isn't Alex Jones terrific? Just none of these things that an actual like jug hooter would say. And it's so weird to me because, like, yeah, he's exceedingly comfortable talking to members of the media because until like 2019 or 2020, he was like Mr. WEF. Davos was probably his favorite fucking place in the world to go. It is like there are people who have gone from liberal to conservative, from like, you know, SDS to neocon, from trot to fucking whatever, right? That's a common path. But specifically someone who has gone from like specifically a fan of the New World Order to being like, no, I actually hate them. That I haven't really seen.
Josh, what do you make of the contrast between like the instincts that led Trump to pick JD Vance and Kamala's team picking Tim Walz? Like, what do you make of the contrast between Walz and Vance? Because I guess like my takeaway is like, you know, there wasn't much politics at the DNC, but like, you know, I mean, from a purely pragmatic standpoint or just strategically, not morally, and morally, I watched the DNC as I would imagine the Wannsee conference would look like if it had a DJ.
Yeah.
But that being said, like I have been sort of at least somewhat taken aback by the, at least what I regard as like the slightly better political instincts of the Kamala Harris campaign, as opposed to what I was assuming would be like the standard Democratic playbook. Like, do you see that at all? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like really that, like it made so much sense to me in so many ways. I was surprised to see them not do it. But the biggest contrast, and I think this is a bit underrated by people who kind of look at like the policy details and everything, just the basic qualifications. Walz it's just a very generically qualified resume. He was a member of Congress for like 5 terms. He's a second-term governor. Like that's just very basic. Vance has been in the Senate since 18 months now. I think somebody said this and it really stuck with me. Trump's campaign, this year is older than JD Vance has been a senator. Trump began his campaign in November 2022. Vance was sworn in January 2023. So when he began this campaign, Vance was technically unemployed. He's only run in public office once, in Ohio in a Republican plus 12 state in an opposition midterm for his party with 8%.
And Josh, as you pointed out, his political campaign was dead until Trump endorsed him.
Oh, yeah. He was going to get in 4th place in a 3rd-person race. There was no natural constituency for this. Yeah.
He was losing a jug hooter off to a Jewish man.
Yeah, Josh Mandel.
Josh Mandel, is the son of 2 orthodontists. He was born into the role of being the cantor at a conservative synagogue. And he was more convincingly a jug hooter than JD was.
He was great. He was a born right-wing outrage poster. He walked so Valentina Gomez could run. I was really sad to see him not get that nomination. But he was losing to a fucking businessman, Mark Dolan or something. It was the guy who owns the Cleveland the Cleveland Guardians, excuse me. He was not it wasn't even a DeSantis thing where at least DeSantis was in 2nd place before Trump had to endorse him twice. There was just no traction there. People were not fucking with him at all. And he just gets over the line with a plurality of the vote because Trump endorses him. I think Bernie Moreno actually did way better than him this year, which says a lot in the primary. And he was losing for most of that election. He was down to Tim Ryan in Ohio throughout most of the summer and into the fall. The Republicans had to bail him out with tens of millions of dollars, just flooding the airwaves. And even then, he still underperformed Trump by 2 points. And that was in a year where every other Ohio Republican was winning by 20. So just electorally, this guy isn't just somebody who's unimpressive or inexperienced. He was one of the worst candidates you could bring up of that entire year period. He was very he was Blake Masters, Herschel Walker tier. And it's just when you get to that point where you see somebody making such a questionable pick like Palin or Eagleton or whatever, it's you the sort of default assumption is well, that was all they could do, or they really desperately needed to fill this certain role. Trump could have picked anybody. It's really strange. He had Burgum, not only Youngkin was right there. Youngkin was term limited, he wanted it. Was there some issue with him being taller than him or something? I don't that. I don't get.
part of this is how he really did get red pilled as Donald Trump since 2020, and he listened. I keep mentioning Don Jr. because he was a factor in all this. So Don Jr. I'm kind of borrowing. I think it was John Swan at the Times who had this, but when they were in their final decision making process, Don Jr. said one that like Vance gets you more, but two that this is Tucker added to the conversation that if he picked somebody else, like he picked Marco Rubio, he might get assassinated by the deep state because the deep state wanted Trump out of the way to replace him with someone like Rubio. And then what happens right before the convention is the deep state, in the form of this loser guy in Pennsylvania, took a shot. The way they talk about it is still they, capital TH, they tried to take him out. I think Trump had already made his mind up mostly for that point, but he was getting this feedback that said, you are winning the election and MAGA can rule for 20 more years, but it won't if you pick Marco Rubio, you pick Doug Burgum. They might betray MAGA. Because he went from unconfident Trump 2016, who needed Pence because he needed to be credible with social conservatives. He didn't need that anymore. They liked him already. It was who will keep your legacy, who is with you on everything, who is just as mean as you are as an attacker. Which Vance can do that. It's just a different style. It's when he tries to relate when he's weirder, and that's how how it went. Whereas on the Democratic side, it was we are in a hole, but we can come out. And Walz has the people are going to like him once they meet this guy. They're going to like this guy with this story that has gone over how many times? I mean, he won swing seats for 10 years in Minnesota, and then he won governor twice. He wasn't winning deep red areas like Amy Klobuchar, but you can see the results. Like, he's remained pretty popular. Well, I think still the most popular guy on either ticket since he got in the race, since Republicans bashed him, because they were like, no, we don't assume that the whole country's on our side. We assume we might need somebody who can appeal to a voter that doesn't like Kamala Harris. Republicans didn't think that. They're like, no, the country wants Trump. How can the country be promised even more Trump when you're gone?
It's so strange to me because I don't know, for most other political parties, like a midterm like 2022 would have been a massive wake-up call that you need to do something different. And specifically in 2022, like the weirdo stuff, like the fucking, not to use the now Democratic meme, but like this stuff where you're like, people are asking questions about like the pipes at their kids' school, and you're like, I'm gonna make sure that there are no tampons there. Like, where you freak everyone out. That it would have caused some re-examination, but no, they doubled down on it somehow.
It's like, it's the weirdest part of that to me is that like there was like a 2-month period where like there was a reaction where DeSantis was like competitive in the primary polling. They just kind of forgot about it. And probably because like DeSantis, I think he never really successfully litigated why exactly they did so poorly and why he might have done well in particular. It was, he tried to spin it into like the Ted Cruz style, like, oh, Trump wasn't right wing enough and I was. And that just wasn't like a coherent narrative in a way that like, even like saying like, oh, we need to return to rhinoism, it would have gotten a lot of flack, but at least might have like made people somewhat interested. Like, I think he kind of had just like a very kind of like, we can have our cake and eat it too pitch that like just left people uninterested. Haley just like went back to she like towed the line for a little bit and like kind of pressed on that, and she did see growth, but then she just really immediately pivoted to like a Bill Kristol style like never Trump thing when she actually got attention, which was really strange to me. So like in that sense, this has never really been litigated by the party at the national level there, because they still tried running the Trumps right during the primary. There was never like kind of a reckoning with it. And I think the Trump people felt kind of, maybe, I mean, I can't say, I'm just guessing, that like they felt defensive in a way, and they have to prove like, I don't know, 2022 is a fluke for whatever reason, on like this kind of Trump without Trumpism, 1,000-year Reich sort of idea can work. So they're just forcing the issue a little bit.
Yeah. In 2020, they had, he's been president and things are bad now, but they're going to come back. And now they have a mix of that, plus he is going to destroy the whole system. Like they've returned to the you can he was president, but he's not the establishment, and no one has tried that before because it's kind of unwieldy. It does feel more real and true to Trump's personality than when he was talking about the First Step Act, like, which he clearly didn't care about. But that is what they're trying, and they're doing it with Vance and with mean, Tulsi Gabbard, who had already been pro-Trump, re-upping her endorsement this week, helping him in the debates. They really have glommed onto sort of these populist characters who maybe they were interested in Bernie at 16, but their main interest was in saying American politics sucks. We need more options. It didn't feel like he needed those guys a month ago, and now he does. So that is a change in how the whole operation is working. They were running a much more confident campaign when they chose Vance.
They're also like poll deniers now. They were like, there was an email that they put out where they said like they skewed the polls.
And we're not picking up all the Trump voters who never do respond to pollsters, but we are picking up the super excited Kamala coconut moms, which that's not crazy. I'm definitely sure there are Democrats who turned off TV and didn't answer polls a month ago, and they are now. But pollsters know that's happening.
Well, but before we all get too high on Vice President Tim Walz, I mean, he does have a number of glaring issues that have come up over the past couple of days, chief among them being his son, who cried like a bitch at the convention. But Dave, you've been doing some gumshoe, you've been doing some shoe leather reporting. Is Tim Walz lying about a dog he owns or doesn't own? What's going on? What's going on? Let's get to the bottom of this. What dogs does Tim Walz actually own? And is he lying to the American public about having more dogs than he should?
I love this because the kind of thing I did, and I said, I'm going to do more actual work this week, but this is probably going to get more traffic. So Minnesota Republicans shared these two photos of Walz with a dog. He got a dog called Scout because he promised, I think Gus, he'd buy a dog in 2018. He's the weak kid who is crying and is deserves to be.
He's a disgrace.
Yeah. They need to bury him under the jail.
He's not looks maxing.
He's not mewing.
He's eating corn oil. He's not mewing. Everything you can do wrong, he's doing it wrong because
he's a nightmare for most parents who have a son.
If that was my son, I would sell him to a pedophile or the Sheikh from Taken.
Just to prove how normal I am. But anyway, so Walz bought this dog, Scout, and Minnesota's not a small state, but it's small enough where when the governor has a dog and talks about it all the time, people are like, it's the dog. It's the brown Labrador, black Labrador, chocolate lab, I guess. And so then at one point in October 2022, he's heading toward re-election. He's probably going to win. And he does it. He just stops at a dog park and meets another dog that is not a black Labrador, that is a different kind of dog. And just has a tweet up saying that he had a good time at the dog park, and so did Scout, so did his other dog. I didn't recognize it at first, but as a dad joke. But then I just went to his old Instagram and found the video of him meeting this other dog, and thought, I get that. Like I've seen that kind of joke where you're out with your dog and you meet another one at the dog park, and you joke that, well, my dog also enjoyed it, but here's a picture of me with this nice guy I met and his cool dog. But Minnesota Republicans jump on this as if, I'll quote the first guy, "Yes, this is Tim Walz tweeting about his dog Scout. Only problem, these are two completely different dogs." And I didn't jump on this until one U.S. Senator, Eric Schmidt of Missouri, and also Kimberly Guilfoyle, who, by dint of being close to Don Jr., is next to the campaign. Clearly, this is getting passed around on the phone with the Trump family members. Like, you see this? You see how this guy faked his dog? He didn't. It was very clear that he just had I think he did troll them by deleting it, or the Walz campaign deleted his tweet, but not the original video. And so I saw hours of this where just guys on Twitter were saying Tim Walz is such a liar that he faked his dog, and we know the truth. That is the story there. This is, I think, if I need to just sell it as relevant, it's that this is, I don't know, the 20th thing that Walz has done that is sort of hard to explain to people as a scandal, but they insist is. This keeps happening. This keeps happening to Walz, where something not that bad happened, or in this case, literally nothing. And this is the one that's going to get him. You're going to have to drop him the ticket now.
The biggest scandal since Jane Sanders stole college.
Yeah. How quickly we forget. How quickly we forget.
Yeah. I think the way to explain this is that, like, they're kind of like convinced at this point that Walz is like such a serial like liar that he's like a danger to the public, and they need to like expose him, like, to show how low he could possibly go. They don't like see this like a political hit. It's like a public service at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a rumor before the convention where these guys on Twitter who'll just say breaking before their own thoughts. They're just saying breaking. Rumors going around. They might have to dump Tim Walz. And as a reporter who has followed, lots of reporters, like thousands of us, are following that. We're just, that's not happening. He's in good shape.
I think it's just like,
what are you guys talking about?
It's that they feel stung by the weirdo thing about JD Vance, that like, oh, he's weird, he's creepy, women don't like him, and they're like, oh, I'll see. It's like doubling down. They're like, I'll see you that in Raise. Everybody knows Tim Walz is an aggressive sexual predator of children. And it's just like, okay, all right. Okay.
Oh, that one. Did you guys talk about it in a prior episode?
The horse semen.
The drinking cum, drinking horse cum. He's like, he does bestiality. They're like, women are kind of weirded out by JD Vance and his comments about postmenopausal females. And they're like, oh yeah, well, Tim Walz fucked a horse and every child he ever taught at school. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, the fact that you think that it may be true is what really gets you.
It's like when like a group of friends are like razzing each other, and then someone brought along by maybe a less popular friend tries to join in. It's like, oh, you're putting on a little weight. Oh, your hairline's receding. I heard that you raped your sisters when you were growing up. What?
That's
okay.
That's not the dozens, sir. Please go home. Yeah.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock, because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
But I return to the DNC though, because like I want to get back to like obviously like going into it, it seemed like the kind of the fissure, or like what everyone was worried about if you were a Democratic Party partisan, was the idea that like the pro-Palestinian protesters or the issue of Gaza would upend the carnival of good feelings that we had at this DNC. But like, Dave, there was definitely this controversy over like, will they let the uncommitted delegates speak or not?
Oh yeah,
and they did not. But like, am I wrong to assume that like the Democratic Party after this convention basically thinks Gaza and Palestine, like we can put that one to bed? That issue's over for us. I mean, like it speaks to a certain confidence of like when they were filing out of the convention center, literally with their fingers in their ears, going la la la, I can't hear you, la la, or just making fun of the death of an 18-year-old kid. That speaks to me a certain confidence, and it's like it's both the fact that like, look, this was not Chicago '68. The protests were not as big as people. I don't know who was expecting what or whatever, but the narrative seems to be that the protests were kind of a fizzle. But like, Dave, what do you make? Like, have the Democrats like did they feel confident now that Kamala has made some sort of symbolic break with Biden on this, and that this issue can be put to bed safely?
Yeah, they felt much better after Monday. That is true. And I was one of the reporters outside at the protest reporting back like, hey, it's pretty big, but it's not going to break the doors down, destroy the convention. It was the March on DNC coalition, which was the 270 groups organizing it. They were hoping for 40 to 50,000, which is what they said. They definitely got, I'd say, a tenth of that, more on some days. There were different rallies around the city. Didn't get that huge. That definitely changed the Democrats' posture on this, where they weren't going around mocking the protests, but they realized they were not a big problem. They were trying to, I'll clarify the actual DNC was getting meetings with the uncommitted delegates. They got them a panel at part of, so how do I explain this in a non-boring way? There's the convention that was the United Center. Then there was all the other convention activity across town at the McCormick Center. And they got them a sold-out gigantic panel about Gaza that was on the schedule. And that was sort of, it sounds like it shouldn't be an olive branch, and it kind of wasn't. But that was one of their offers. Like, hey, we gave you this. We gave you a panel. And you got to put all your guys on it. Aren't you happy about that? They kept demanding a Palestinian-American speaker. They suggested a state legislator, and just the Democrats, they would not respond on the record. The thing they were kind of telling reporters is more that not like, haha, these people are losers and we can't deal with them. It was more, what else are we supposed to do? It's actually about it's about getting a ceasefire. If we just get a ceasefire, then the protest will go away. They were not, even when you get pushed like after a couple of drinks off the record, they were not mocking these people. They just thought this is an intractable problem. It's Bibi's fault. We need to end the war. And if we put them on stage or don't put them on stage, it's going to distract from our message without getting us anything. The only part of that I think is defensible, even if you're not a Democrat, is it would be pretty pathetic if Democrats had one 5-minute speech on stage and everyone in Michigan was like, all right, sounds great. I'm turning off my TV. I assume the war is going to figure itself. Like, they would have still been protesting, but they were trying to be really genteel about it, and they're like nothing we do. This is why there was so much in Kamala's acceptance speech, like more than ever had been said in an acceptance speech about Palestinians in particular. They wanted that to get out there, like it's on her mind. This is on the list of things she wants to get done before the election. Please do not protest us anymore, but we're not going to offer anything else for now. But would they have done that if the protest the first day was like 40,000 people destroying the convention? I don't know. That definitely made them readjust their position.
Yeah, they had to really need that speaking slot for Leon Panetta.
Yeah,
no, considering who got
having him speaking.
Oh my god,
fucking things.
Yeah, that fucked me up because I really distinctly remember like watching him like at the DNC in like 2016. They made such a big fucking deal about Leon Panetta. They acted like he was fucking like Christ descending from the heavens, like giving them an address, and he just like sucked. They might have had like a video introduction, and I was like, that was when like the first moment I started having doubts. So when I saw they had him and Bill Clinton for prime time. That was what they really needed to prioritize. And also all the drum lines and music breaks. That was like really, really important. Just no room in there.
The interpretive dancers.
Yeah.
The Ettingermentum movement, which obviously different from the people organizing protests outside, their last ditch effort for a speaker was this guy who is like from the fucking Atlantic Council and is like extremely like anti-Hamas and has, one of the more conciliatory stances towards Zionism in general out of anyone. And even that was like just a bridge too far. I mean, among Democratic staffers, you said that the feeling is like, hey, it's Netanyahu's fault and he's really, he's putting us in this shitty position. But is there any acknowledgement that like, okay, sending them weapons kind of gives them the fucking message that they can keep doing this? Is there any acknowledgement of that? Because that seems to be totally absent from the conversation. The one time it was asked of Kamala, she said it's totally off the table.
Yeah, this is the thing they're still in denial about. They're not in denial about anything Biden related anymore, but they are in denial that there's something they could do to change the policy. The other thing I'd say about the uncommitted folks is that they reminded me of the Bernie delegates who wanted Hillary to just be better in 2016. I remember talking to people like Josh Fox at the convention on the floor, and they just were worried Hillary is going to blow this because if she doesn't come out against TPP, if she doesn't make some more promises, their position was, we're not just doing this because we're obstinate. We're doing this because we think she's going to blow it. And they were right. She blew it. And the uncommitted delegates were their message was they had press conferences at least a couple times a day. We want her to win. We want to come back here in January 2025 under President Kamala Harris, and for her to be negotiating with Netanyahu because she doesn't have 50 years of like Golda Meir memories like Joe Biden does. Like maybe she will deal with this differently, but she needs to prove it. And Democrats definitely we're going to prove this later. Just count on us to maybe get a ceasefire, and we'll be different later. Just vote for us now and shut up was their attitude.
Yeah. Uncommitted, the characterization of it among like, I won't say the party because they've mostly avoided saying anything directly, but like amongst surrogates the characterization of them was so insane to me because it's like I see the uncommitted movement as like a group of people who are already probably going to vote for fucking Kamala anyway, begging Kamala to make it somewhat more palatable. Like this idea that they are like, they're characterizing them like the Bernie or bust people in 2016. They're talking about them like they're us in 2016. And it's like, they're the most like work within the fucking party movement I've ever seen.
Yeah. They really wanted her, just give me something to go back home and tell my relatives, actually, they're trying to do something to end the war, or they're going to end it, or they're going to treat this differently than Biden. They just wanted something to tell their friends because everyone else is coming back with a packet of exciting Kamala takes to go door to door with, and they're saying we literally can't. We can't go to Dearborn and say, yes, the president the vice president who is working with Biden to do nothing different is credible. You should vote for her. That's what they wanted, and they didn't really get it.
What you see in like there was I have a Washington Post piece here about Democrats tamp down Gaza dispute for now with concessions and clampdowns. And it says here, Harris in her public comments has emphasized Palestinian suffering more than President Joe Biden and has held Israel more directly responsible for the high civilian death toll in Gaza and slow pace of humanitarian aid. And I tie this to to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show about all these people that were Biden ride or die. It would be suicide to switch out the nominee. It's only going to be Biden. It has to be Biden. The ease with which that they've now just completely changed into being Kamala's brat. We love Kamala. Who's Joe Biden? It's the ease with which they do that, I think, is connected to their inability to conceive of why anyone is still pissed off at the Democratic Party and Kamala over this, because they're look, she did the thing you all wanted. She said she recognizes the suffering of Palestinian people. What more do you want? And it's just this idea that this is politics to them. It's well, look, you got the panel at the MacArthur Center or whatever. What more do you want? And the idea that that politics isn't about real conceivable things, is this war going to continue or not? It's just about do you get the person to say the thing? Or just how easily they can just move between I was always for Kamala Harris to just being well, what you keep moving the goalposts. What do you really want from Kamala?
Yeah, somebody remind me of. I'm not casting aspersions on the uncommitted people because they were not taking any. They were not taking half a loaf and saying, "Great, you did it." They were like, "Thank you for the thing you gave us. We want more." But I think what the Democrats wanted. I remember I was covering this Women's March rally in 2018. The main run was 2017. 2018 was a big political rally in Vegas. And I was right in front of these women who just kept screaming, talk about sex workers, say something about sex workers, because they wanted to just hear, we wanted our names to be mentioned as we are also in the coalition. And it was, 10 people. And then finally the 11th person, I think was Richards from Planned Parenthood, said, and sex workers. And they said, yeah. And then they sat down. The one thing they wanted was, please mention our movement in your speeches. And once they were mentioned, they're nah, they mentioned us. We're good. And that is a lot of people in the Democratic coalition, right? That is a lot of people who show up and they say they want something and they get one meeting. We're blogger. This is why the Voters of Tomorrow is this Democratic youth organization that started up to be their turning point. But it doesn't make news because it just agrees with Democrats. Most people in their coalition will get into the room and then they're fine, and not uncommitted, not Gaza. So they were very careful. You could not pull them out to be bashing them. They were well, we all agree, we all want the end of the war, but it would hurt our scheduling if instead of one 5-minute speech from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, whoever wants to hear from, we had these guys instead. They would not move, and I think part of it was, if we move on this, we're going to move on. Maybe they'll keep asking because the arms embargo thing. That story. So in Michigan, I happened to be at this one Harris rally. It was not close to hear the protesters, but she gets protested. She landed. She met with uncommitted delegates, including the ones at the convention. Then there was a separate protest by some students for justice in Palestine at the convention. At the rally. Harris tells them, "I'm speaking." They get annoyed, and the uncommitted people put out the word that they talked to Harris and they hope they can meet with her on an arms embargo, after which point Harris's team says, nope, not doing that. We're not doing arms embargo. We will continue to meet, but not on the thing they want. And that's what they want. That was what worried them, is if we have a meeting and then they come out and tell reporters, great news, they've agreed that we might have more to negotiate. They don't want to do that because they're worried about, they've raised more money than any candidate ever has in the same period of time. And they've got a lot of people back on the tent. They're just more worried about them. They're just more worried about not pissing off large donors who want them to hear that they're not changing anything with Israel. I'm not defending them. I'm just trying. I'm going through this chart of ways in which they did this, all of which end with them taking the more cautious, non-sympathetic position to uncommitted.
Well, look,
so that's why they're doing it. They're just no. We need you in the tent. See this group. You see this this climate group that just stopped talking. You see how the Latino groups stopped talking, even though we endorsed a Trump voter bill. Can you be like them? They're just not going to do it. They're not going to attack us. Be like them.
It's working out great for them. They're
for Latinos, yeah.
Yeah.
I dearly wish this wasn't the case, but it does seem like they are confident with this huge swing in momentum and all the energy and positive feelings. I think they're confident going to this election that Gaza is not going to be a critical issue in this election. Because certainly they have the media behind them, but like more than that, the genuine good feeling and enthusiasm of Democrats who have been told, hey, look, she feels Palestinian suffering, and like that's good enough. And I mean, I think it's horrible, but I think that they have, I don't know, tell me I'm wrong here, but I think they've accurately deduced that like they can get away with this election and not change a single thing about Israel and Palestine.
My take on, I thought I wrote about in the article I just published, the assumption there that they have, which is like being afraid of having to give more on Palestine than they already have. Like if they like start talking serious about an arms embargo, that's something they actively need to avoid. That's, I think, more informed by their presumptions than the actual information we have. Obviously, donors are a different story, but there was a poll around last July, it was before Biden dropped out, and I cited this, where they asked voters how they would like vote just in a generic race between Democrats, like this is at the congressional level, between Democrats and Republicans, and then like they gave like different like policy positions for the Democrats and Republicans on different issues. It included a ceasefire, and the guy who conducted this talked to me about it, and he said he didn't expect this to be the result, but they found that like generic, like when they didn't ask anything, Democrats led by 3 in the generic ballot. And when they told them that the Democrats and Republicans both agreed on like Israel, they had the same position on that policy. The number of undecideds went up by a lot, and Democrats and Republicans were actually tied. So there was a 3-point swing in the Republicans' favor there. But when they said that Republicans agree with Israel's current approach and like opposing them as a Democrat who supports a ceasefire and a halt of military and arms sales to Israel, not only did they do as well as a generic matchup, they actually led by 6 points. So they doubled their lead when presented with this like the Democrats doubled their lead when it was voters were told that they supported both the ceasefire and an arms embargo. And you can like kind of like say any number of reasons for that. You can say they're winning over some voters who are still skeptical of them. I think what like makes the most sense to me is that it's a break from Biden in any direction, which they seem to like just looking like this is a Democrat who disagrees with Biden in a significant way, who people broadly see as incompetent. His approval rating on Israel-Palestine is below 30%. It's lower than his approval on immigration, crime, and inflation, like which like people like really have not keyed in on. If you're doing like, I mean, obviously you'll need more than just one poll for this, but if you're making an objective look at the political reality, but like looking at why she's done so well, which is being someone different than Biden, who is perceived as more competent and like steady and capable than he is. And you see like breaking from him on immigration as this big thing you have to make a big deal over. Breaking from him on a position where he's even less popular than immigration, at the very least, there seems to be not much downside for that, but they perceive there to be downside in a way they don't see for immigration, because this is a crucial point that like I like kind of came to. These are still the same exact people who ran Joe Biden's campaign.
Yeah.
Like the leader. These are the people who tried to like run an 81-year-old talking about how unions were his domestic NATO. Like it's the same exact group of people.
Are the grad student unions Finland?
Yes, they are. Yeah, nobody thought he could get them in there. It's a huge break. Starbucks is Sweden.
All right. We got to wrap it up there today because Dave's got a hard out. But we'll leave it there for today. I want to thank Dave Weigel and Josh Ettingermentum for checking in on the election.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.